The stream is a working. We'll see soon enough if anybody comes by to talk. We're going to talk a little bit about the Republican debate. So you can fire your questions away in the chat. I'll get to them eventually. I'm thinking about, just watch the thing live. So I'm thinking about what I want to say and what things I think are worth pointing out. But I'd also like to hear what you have to say and what things you think are worth pointing out. And hopefully we'll get a pretty good crew in here. But we gotta wait like a couple of minutes, I think, for the notification to go out and for people to kind of log in. And also, I think the stream is probably a little bit delayed, so we'll have to see who comes by and what you have to say. Feel free to chat wherever you are. I'll be able to see it. If you're joining us on Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, LinkedIn. Yeah, I'm not really sure where to start. I think that the best thing I could say about it overall is that it made the Commission on Presidential Debates look really good. And it made me think that the commission debates are actually a little bit more organized, a little bit more wieldy. And that's really a bad thing to make the commission debates look good. So the Commission on Presidential Debates runs the national election debate. And for this media debate was really unhinged. It started off way too hot, I think. And these candidates were desperate to get any kind of time. They thought they would be left out. And that's a very beginner kind of rookie maneuver in my view. Why is that? Well, they're just kind of panicked. They're not going to get enough attention. They're not going to be on TV enough. They're not going to get their message out. So they're super duper hot and super duper talking over each other and all kinds of nonsense. And these journalists saw that it's very difficult to control the debate, just like we saw for Chris Wallace when he did the famous Trump-Biden debate. Could see how difficult it was for him to keep order. And these journalists had the exact same problem keeping order. Why is that? Why is it that they couldn't keep order in the debate? Well, the obvious answer is that it's not a debate. A debate is orderly because everyone has a job to do in a debate in order to win the debate. In this kind of a thing, whatever you want to call this, we're calling it a debate. Fox is calling it a debate. All the other journalists have joined the cabal. In fact, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, all the different news media companies have joined the cabal, and they're all saying, this is a debate. We're going to have debate commentary. So they're using that word over and over again. So maybe it would be a good idea to review what a debate typically requires. An agreed upon topic where somebody supports the topic and says, yes, that's true, or at the very least, that's a good idea. And then another group who says, no, it's not a good idea. It's not true. It's not true. It's a bad idea. Sorry, my phone is beeping at me. Why aren't they watching the live stream? Why are people texting me at this hour? Then there's usually a question period of some kind, and then judgment. So these are the elements of debate. They could question each other, but that questioning should be kind of narrow. One question, a response, one question, and then that's it. Then at the end, you have some kind of judgment, and that judgment should be by somebody they all agree upon to be a judge. So that's what a debate is. So this doesn't really have those elements, and that's a very old argument. Lots of people have made this argument. But how do you make it a little bit more controlled? I think they were out of gas by the last 30 or 40 minutes because it got a little bit better. I don't know if you guys feel the same way as I do about that. It got a little bit better in the last 40 minutes because I think they were kind of out of gas, and they said all the things that their very expensive political advisors told them to say, and they felt like they got it all out. And so it got a little bit better at the end, but then the end became ridiculous with all the website ads and stuff. I don't know, but I'm interested to see who you think you did. Who you think did best. We have some comments coming in. Professor Heinemann says that it was a that's not the quote I wanted to show. Here it is. Yeah. Half are angling for the VP Trump slot. What do you think Donald Trump thought about this thing? Do you think he watched it? I wonder. I don't think he's looking for any of these people for his vice president. I think it'll be some really random, strange person, I think. But yeah, it was a hoot and a half. I think it was very funny. That Vivek Ramaswamy guy, what is wrong with him? I don't think he really understands how to communicate. I think that there is a lot of political angling here, but I'm sort of interested in thinking about how do we look at this kind of thing. And I'm waiting for the transcript to come up because I want to kind of show you guys a little something that I've been working on. Let's see. Fox News transcript Republican debate. That search should bring it up, right? PBS has a bingo card. What? That's very, very strange. Okay, you guys got to see this. I think this is a very odd thing. Look at this. Republican debate bingo. Let me refresh it. Can you guys see that or no? I don't know if you can see it. Hello, Tom. That's a very strange way to evaluate the debate. I am looking for the transcript. So, yeah, I can only see the middle square. Yeah. I don't know why it didn't show up. Let's see. Does CNN have the transcript? Oh, they have the closing statements. That might be good. So one of the things to think about is if this isn't a debate and we can't evaluate it like a debate because it doesn't meet any of those elements, then how can we evaluate it? And the best thing we have is to say, well, whoever really hits you and you really feel like, oh my gosh, they're right. But that has some problems with it. That response has some problems with it, even though that would be sort of the traditional persuasive answer is this candidate's right. They're saying the right thing. That's who I want to support. That has like lots of great democratic vibes to it and lots of great senses about how to watch this thing. But the problem with that is that you might only be really confirming your own biases. So the debate has not given you any kind of new. I wonder what happened to the chat. I had the chat up here on the screen for everybody to look at. Oh well. I'll have to try it again. This thing is not working as well as it used to. I think it's because I turned off auto renew on the streaming service, so maybe they know that they're getting. But I'll share the comments as they come in as I want to talk about them. So if you evaluate it on the fact that you think this person is speaking the truth and this person is right and this person is saying what needs to be done, the debate isn't really informing you about anything. It's not helping your opinion become stronger. Let's say you don't want to change your mind and you absolutely want to vote for Nikki Haley or Asa Hutchinson or this Ramaswamy character. You want to have a strong case, I would imagine, so you can persuade people to do it too, or at least to leave you alone and step off and say, okay, they have their mind made up. This debate wouldn't have helped you do that in any kind of way. I don't really understand how that would help. So the other way that we've determined how to make these debates useful is to do fact checking. So lots and lots of journalists from the Washington Post, New York Times stuff will have the fact check-o-meter. It'll be, was it factual what Mike Pence said? Was it factual what DeSantis said, et cetera? And they'll check the facts. But that doesn't really tell you how to feel either, because facts are always interpretations. There's no separation of that. So we like the idea of having just the facts. But when you have a fact, you immediately start interpreting it. And facts are interpretations too. That they're a selection, as Kenneth Burke tells us, they're a selection of reality and a deflection of reality. So everything a fact tells you, there's other things that it's not telling you in order to contextualize and coalesce itself as a fact. So that's a problem too. So how can we make this format that we're given, or this event that we're given, be useful or make sense in some way to help us make a better decision? Well, I have an idea, and that is we have to kind of break up what people are saying into some different categories in order to help us evaluate it or help us make it make more sense. So here I have a little Microsoft Word document, and I'm going to make the font really big. Please tell me if you can see it or if you can't. So I think, and I've written about this before, I think there's 4 things that a candidate has to do in a presidential debate in order to really give people something useful to work with. Oh, that's the wrong place to type. This is not a valid number. I agree. Framework. What does the world look like? Principle. What do I stand for? Vision. What do I want to do? And action. How can you know that I can do it? And so I think these 4 things are things that I think when you look at a debate or you watch a debate, you should be looking for the candidates to do all 4 of these things. And then it really will help you maybe make a better decision or figure out why you hate somebody as much as you do, why you like somebody as much as you, or maybe the question that we would presumably want debates to help us with, which is why should you like them too, or why is this the strongest case? So we can look at maybe a little bit of the transcript here, and that can help us. Okay, I'm back. So let me share this bit of transcript from CNN. They're kind of doing a live blog of it. Let me make that a little bigger for you. Okay, that should be pretty good, right? So Doug Burgum, and by the way, Doug Burgum, I want to say a couple of things about him and some of the arguments he made as well later on in the stream. Don't let me forget. So here's a quote from Doug Burgum. And this has some of the elements you can immediately see in the 4-part rubric that I kind of talked about, right? You can see that right away. Our economy is being crushed by Biden's energy policies. Bye, Professor Heinemann. Too bad you have to go. It is kind of late, but you can always watch the video later, I guess, and give me some more comments. So our economy is being crushed by Biden's energy policies, which are raising the cost of every product you buy. Okay, that would be framework. So when Governor Burgum says this, you can say to yourself, okay, does that describe my reality, or do I see that in my life, or do I know of evidence that this is happening? And you can be very picky with this. You can say, yeah, I think things are being increased. The price of everything I buy is increasing, but is it Biden's energy policy? And that would give you a way to go research and say, what is Biden's energy policy? Because you might not know what it is. And it would be hard pressed for anyone, I think, to just say what Biden's energy policy is, because there's probably a very complicated document out there somewhere. Most of the time, that we don't have a national energy policy, I don't think, as the United States. So it's very difficult to understand whether that's reality or not. So that kind of makes me question Doug Burgum's ability to describe the world in a way that I can resonate with. Okay, secondly, one thing I will do as president, I will secure the border. I will get this economy sprinting, not crawling like it is now. Okay, so he's giving vision there. I'm going to secure the border. That's what I want to do as president. I'm going to secure the border. I will get this economy sprinting, not crawling like it is now. Now, this would be principle. He wants to get the economy sprinting. Now, what's missing here is a connection between securing the border and getting the economy sprinting. He talked a little bit about fentanyl. I don't really get it. There needs to be much more connective tissue here before we can really say, okay, he's got a good case. Because every time somebody's speaking in anything, they're really offering a case for something. So I want you to keep that in mind. That's really a very, very important thing. They're building a case. So you want to make sure that that case is strong. And, you know, there's not a lot there. So let's look at Asa Hutchinson's closing statement, and we can do the same kind of analysis. The solution is not 4 more years of Joseph Biden. The solution is not 4 more years of Donald Trump. The solution is new leadership that can bring bold ideas to America and to bring out the best in America. Now, what do we do with this? What do we do with this kind of statement? I think this is all vision statement. Or it could be, well, actually, it's more principle. What do we need? What's the thing we stand for? And this statement, this is also principle from Tim Scott. But you see, the media doesn't really do a very good job with presenting this, because they're going to cherry pick and edit the things that they think are best. So they're not really going to show you. This is why it's good to have a full transcript, or if you're watching the thing, it's good to take some notes. I took some notes when I was watching it, and yeah, pretty good. Let's deal with some comments. Kyle is here. Ron Death Santis is awful at this one. The polls will reflect his ability. It's tough to say. The research on these kind of debates is not direct. These kind of debates haven't really been, they're quite new, so they haven't really been researched that well by scholars. But the things we know about presidential debates is the further away from election day, the more impact they have on changing minds. And most people who watch them say it influences their voting. But it's just so far away that those two stats don't really make a lot of sense together. Presidential debates are often held in October, as they're so close to the election, and both parties know that close to the election, they can't really lose what they have. So they want these things to have a minimal impact, because they know a gaffe, a big mistake, or looking like a fool can really hurt your campaign, and they don't want that to have a lot of time to have impact. So I don't know. I don't know if it will or not. Let's see. We have a comment here from Bad Jazz. I don't see how viewers can learn anything in this format of debate. It all seems like posturing, best giving a sense of their personas, but that's about it. Some people would say getting a sense of the personas really does make a big difference for them. They're like, oh, I felt like they were a regular guy. But this is an absence of any kind of rubric from the media or any kind of rubric from the campaigns. The lack of a rubric from the campaign, from the Commission on Presidential Debates, from anybody, and journalists trying to create a rubric like this quite embarrassing one that I'm going to try to show you. It's quite embarrassing. Play bingo tonight during the presidential debate. Oh, we're going to play bingo. Oh. This is so weird. Phrases, names, proposals that you expect to hear, and then you can mark them off. That's a very, very weird way to handle the debate. But in absence of any kind of debate education or any kind of rhetorical education, real trouble. Real trouble there. We get into real trouble. But back to Bad Jazz's comment, this idea of personas, I think, is very important. Like, I need to know who they are as a person, and the debate can present that. And so you saw Vivek Ramaswamy doing that, saying everybody up here is doing their stock quotes and their getting out their practiced phrases. I just want to be real. So he's of that school of thought, I think, too. And then you have these rehearsed people who kind of keep their personas. Like Chris Christie kind of kept his TV persona. Mike Pence kept his persona. So there's some consistency there, I think, as well. But it would be much more important for these things not to do things for candidates, but to do things for us. And one of the best things they could do for us is to give us more and better reasons why we hold, change, or dislike, or hold or change a position. Why we dislike somebody so much, why we like somebody so much. That's what's the real important element to these things. This is a great question from Dream Shadow. Have campaign websites taken some of the wind out of the sails of debates? I think I know what this question means, which is, do people still watch presidential debates? And I think, yeah, I think that the appetite for debates is huge. I think people watch these things, and if they don't watch them, they're going to watch them anyway, because tomorrow morning, all the morning news chat shows are going to have highlights of this, right? So you're going to see it all happen. You're going to see all the, it's going to be 2 hours distilled down to about 15, 20 minutes. And then a lot of commentary about what it meant and who positioned themselves well and everything without any kind of grounding or basis at all to it. Like, what is the reason and what is the theory that's informing this criticism that they're bringing to the debates? Where is it coming from? I think people watch these a lot more. I do think that there are a lot of advantages to not having them on television, having them on the internet, or having them on podcast form. I think would be great, but that would stretch them out and make them a little bit better. Like a lot of the topics tonight, like funding Ukraine war, education, climate change, abortion, all these things could be solo topics you could do 2 hours on. And, professional kinds of debaters, like collegiate debaters, prove that time and time again. But I don't know if campaign websites have. Maybe the internet has. But I think the internet is usually something that people will reference while they're watching the debate, while they're sort of watching the debate. Okay, let's see if we can find that transcript. I think it's going to be a little bit of time. And CNN has a fact checker. Pretty terrible. Pretty terrible. I'm not a big fan of the fact checking just because I don't think it really helps. It doesn't really help us out that much. I know that's kind of a weird thing to say. I know everybody's like, oh, facts. But I think what we got to look at is what they're saying, and how do we think that what they're saying, how can we use it to maybe fact check ourselves? Because we don't want to be led into some kind of confirmation bias trap, or we know very well that people will defend their initial reactions and initial thoughts to things before they will listen to alternative viewpoints. So we want to make sure that we are checking ourselves. And I think that this framework, this framework I've come up with, I think it does a very, very good job of that. So each one of these things would have, supporting questions kind of with it, things that we would want to bring up once we have identified this, which is things like, so like for framework, it would be like, and then principle is like, are these my principles? Should they be national? So one of the things that is lost in these events is the idea of nuance. And let me talk about that for a second, because I thought we saw that a lot, is people saying, I am absolutely 100% going to do this thing. So there's very little discussion about why something should be a national principle. You can have personal principles that would reflect on you as being somebody who'd be a very, very good candidate for president, but maybe shouldn't be a national principle, but could still communicate here. So that nuance is lost. maybe you stand for it and they stand for it, but is it something that you think makes them a good candidate? Why do we think these are good? Are these really the best principles? Here we can say, does the policy match the principle? Can they do it? This was what Nikki Haley was talking about with abortion. So she was really hammering on this vision point on everybody else, saying it simply isn't possible for any Republican president to enact a federal abortion ban. Cannot do it. So hammering on vision is good, but then, it's like, well, what do you do instead? And I know that's a critique with an alternative. It's a classic fallacy, but I think people will be asking that question. Sometimes classical fallacies don't really apply when you're dealing with human communication. Here, action is one of the easiest ones. It's like, is there correspondence? What they did and the abilities to do their plan. So Ron DeSantis kept talking about, oh yeah, I went into the military, I was a soldier, I'm a dad. Okay, where's the connection between these things and being able to do the vision that you want to do as president? We could say it's an enthymeme. Enthymeme is a cool kind of word. We talk about that. An enthymeme is a suppressed argument, right? An enthymeme is an argument that uses what people commonly feel and think and completes the argument. So somebody's like, I will be the strongest president on education. I have 3 daughters. So that's an enthymeme because you're supposed to make that connection for them in some way. So we see a lot of that. Tim Scott saying his mom taught him all the values he needs, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that we see a lot of this kind of argumentation. It takes some time to unpack this stuff. But what I want out of these debates is for people to take what's being said and then ask themselves questions about it. I do not feel that it's enough to just say, oh, they're right. They believe what I believe, so they're right, or they said exactly what we need in this country. And they said it very strongly. No, you need to be able to say more than that. You need to be able to say, here's how I felt before the debate. Here's what they said. I questioned it. I looked some things up, and I have some questions. I need more information on connection. That's a wonderful way to approach other people, too, if you're like, I'm not really sure. Because there are a lot of people out there who are very, very sure about things. And they'll be very, very happy to fill in the gaps for you and tell you exactly what it is that you need to know about the candidate or about the policy and fill it in for you. And it's a great way to hear lots of different perspectives, which is, I think, what you really want to hear before an election. Like, I don't know who these guys, these people on stage here are and why they should be president or why you'd even want to be president. It's a big mystery to me. But if we're going to make a good decision about this person, we should be using the debates to question ourselves. Burgum, this guy Burgum, he said some weird stuff. One of the things he said that I thought was really strange. ChatGPT also cannot produce the transcript. I wish they could. I wish I had it. Yeah, I kind of want to look at it. I might have to do a little bit more of a deeper dive once I have a transcript, because I want to point out some things. But here's one of the things that Burgum talked about that I wanted to talk about in the stream. Burgum said that on the abortion question, the Supreme Court decision, I think all the candidates agreed, the Dobbs decision meant that both the federal government and the states can decide abortion. And it's not one or the other. Okay, interesting interpretation. And then he said the federal government gets its power from the states. Oh, now this is an interesting thing to say. I wonder if we can find that quote, because I want to get it right. Doug Bergrum. Yeah, that was like a long time ago. Doug Bergrum. Doug Bergrum debate. Bergum. So the thing that when he said that, he might have been intentionally pushing up this idea of doctrine nullification. There was a Senate debate that captured American imagination. It's called the Webster Hayes debate. Let me bring up the Wikipedia on it. This debate captured the imagination of the country and was repeated across the country in newspapers. It was everywhere. And what this debate was about was really kind of innocuous. There was a guy named Foote. Foote proposed an amendment that said um, that the federal government can sell any land that it owns without state approval, even if that land is within the state. And Robert Haynes said, no. You cannot do that because the federal government, the devolution of power to the federal government comes from the state governments. And Daniel Webster said, no, the power of the federal government comes from the people. So this is a debate about the supremacy clause and also about what the relationship is between the state and the federal government. Now we're in a very highly federalistic kind of attitude where people are like, well, each state can decide. And people love this. Like good liberals love talking like, oh, I'm so glad I don't live in a red state. Oh, I'm so glad I live in a blue state. And it's just kind of a weird way to think about things, but it's also very like old. So when Doug Burgum said that he believes that federal power comes from the states, okay, that's a little weird. That's like so in the Civil War, the Robert Hayne idea of the states being the root of federal control means states can just refuse to enact federal laws and nullify doctrines they don't like, which led to the Civil War, you could say. So it's interesting to hear that. I don't think he intentionally meant to argue what I just argued, but I think that it's interesting to think that he thinks that federal government power comes from the states in compact, which is something that I think, if you go and read that debate, you'll probably think it's much more interesting what Webster is saying because he's saying the states derive their power from the people. Federal government derives their power from the people. They handle different sorts of things, but the people always sort of decide the legitimacy of these things. And it's pretty interesting. And it was reprinted everywhere and everybody talked about it. And it's kind of cool. So Burgum brought that up and I thought it was a little weird. But he might be unintentionally supporting the doctrine of nullification, which is very bad, which is used in the Civil War. It was also used in the Civil Rights Movement for Southern states not to enforce integration. Let's take a look at some comments here. Bad Jazz might be one of the only people left in the stream here. What is the function or the purpose of these televised debates? Superficial impressions and personas are important for introducing candidates. Feels like empty calories. This is a great metaphor. Empty calories. Yeah, I'm trying to make the debates more ingredients. Would be the way I'd extend your metaphor. I'm trying to make these things seem like more ingredients for you to cook something up yourself, because they're always going to be empty calories because you just kind of want to watch the train wreck. Like I think everybody is going to show the clip of Chris Christie calling Vivek Ramaswamy a guy who sounds like ChatGPT. And also, the last time a little scrawny guy was up here on stage saying, I don't belong here, it was Obama. All of that audience hates Obama. Right? They think he's a terrible president. So what should be the function and purpose of presidential debates? Well, the original idea of televised debates comes to us from the former governor of Illinois, who is, let me look it up. I'll bring the Wikipedia page up there for him as well. It'll be a big surprise. All right. Let's talk about Adlai Stevenson. So Adlai Stevenson was also a United Nations ambassador, but he ran against Eisenhower, and he ran against Eisenhower twice, I think. Yeah, that's a tough thing to do. It's tough to campaign against the guy who beat the Nazis. What do you say? Like, that's a very tough campaign. Smart guy, but he had a lot of trouble getting his message out because the primary system wasn't what it was today. It wasn't as determined, and if you won a primary, it didn't really mean that you won an election. But Stevenson said, hey, we should have televised debates so that candidates don't have to travel all over the country and go to all these local places and then talk about local issues that don't matter. Like, he's like, who cares about cranberries unless you're in Wisconsin? Nobody cares. Who cares about citrus unless you're in Florida? Nobody cares. And those would be the issues you have to talk about. He's like, this is a national office. We should be talking about national ideals. And television is the perfect medium for that. Now, this comes from a man who did not own a television. Everybody, we know very well historically that Adlai Stevenson did not own a television because he would call his friends for updates on baseball games and things like that. He just never had one. I don't think that's really possible today. Maybe you have a friend who doesn't have a TV. Be like Adlai Stevenson. So Stevenson got the federal government to waive federal communications laws and get the Kennedy-Nixon debates to happen. But the legacy here is that he's the guy who was like, television and elections go hand in hand. And that's his kind of legacy. I don't think he'd be happy with that legacy. I think what he wanted was a national conversation about values and principles that would happen regularly, not just in election years, but inform the electorate. So his goal and the idea for televised debates there was to create a conversation that would be much more Whiggish, a conversation about what does it mean to be American? What does America stand for? Not what are you doing for my state or my values or the way I live my life or my ideals, and we should support a president who can articulate that kind of vision. I think that's a very, very cool idea. Then the debates were run by the League of Women Voters for many years, and then after that, the Commission on Presidential Debates took over in 1988. I have a whole video series of this on YouTube. If you're interested in that history, you can watch the video series of that, but I won't go into the details here. The point is, the guy who got it done and pushed for it was someone who said television access cost me 2 elections, and the primary system doesn't help people get a sense of what you stand for nationally. So we have to move to national media to do this. Now, today, Adlai Stevenson, if he was alive, he might say podcasting or web video or what I'm doing here, streaming, might be a great way to do it. And I really think that would be cool. Even TikTok might be a cool way to think about how to do that vision. And also the fact you don't need debates. Like, Stevenson didn't say you needed debates. We need national conversation about these things, but I think it naturally leads to that. And he even, in the article, the national news article he wrote about this, even mentioned that one of his relatives was involved in the Lincoln Douglas debates. So I think he was trying to push that. Yeah, Bad Jazz, I agree. The Burgum comment, I think people should be more active in these debates. So when Burgum says something like federal power comes from the states, the Constitution comes from the states. Well, the Constitution was written by representatives of state governments, but is that where its power derives? Really smart people in the 1800s were fighting about this. The Webster-Hayne debate is available online. You can read it. I think people just really need to go research these things and not rely on the New York Times, Washington Post, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC, Fox, whoever, PBS NewsHour, whoever it might be. You can't rely on these people to tell you whether something's a fact or not, because that's just not interesting. It's not interesting to know if something is a fact or not. That doesn't help you, because what happens if you're like, oh yeah, Mike Pence was not correct about blah blah blah. You can easily just dismiss that and be like, well, I still like him. He's still got the great ideas, and he still speaks the truth. If somebody is factual, it's not going to make you like them all of a sudden. Like, I think I wonder, what do you guys think? Do you think Ramaswamy got a lot of points tonight? Do you think he was likable? Do you think he was someone who was approachable, likable? Do you think Chris Christie's interaction with him made him more likable, approachable? I'd like to know what you think. That kind of stuff is very important because you might not listen to that person if you don't think that they're approachable, likable, or whatever. But one thing I will say about all the debaters, they did not do a very good job of consolidating to what we need. They did a very, very good job talking about themselves and the action point. So we look back on this. This is kind of instructive. I'm glad I thought of this because it's kind of an instructive point here. This is where the candidates were. I think they were very much about themselves. We had a lot of action commentary, which is like, here's what we did, here's what I did, here's what I did in my state, here's what I did when I was in the Bush administration, here's what I did when I was governor, here's what I did when I was a senator. We had a lot of that, but it wasn't connected to anything else. It was just like, oh, I had success on these things, so I should be president. Where's the story about what the country needs or what voters need? That would be the biggest, back in the campaign office. If I was advising these people, I'd be like, wow, you really just messed it up because all you did was talk about yourself and you didn't talk about the country. And you can talk about that in a way to where you become the perfect solution for that. What the country needs is this, this, this. I mean, Asa Hutchinson did a little bit of that. But it just wasn't done very well with him. He's like, well, I think that what the country needs is this. And so we need a plan to do that. We need a policy that will do this. And then, leave it there. I mean, I think that's such a better way to do it. Ramaswamy was charismatic and unhinged, says Bad Jazz. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. All right, so what do the rest of you fine folks think? I think a more coherent and cohesive story about what the world looks like, what values I have when I look at that, what does that make me think? What does it make me feel? What I'm going to do about it and why I have the potential to do it. So you could say, when I look at America, see America where many families aren't really able, they're questioning, like Tim Scott could say something like this, they're questioning the American dream, just like I did when I was a young man. And I know that this country made me who I am today because I had faith in it and I practiced, I followed the rules and I practiced and I did what I was supposed to do. And as president, I think what my administration would do would be to make sure everyone understands that those rules are fair. They provide opportunities to everyone. And I would work in my administration to create policy to do that. And as senator for South Carolina, is that where he's from? I forget. The senator for South Carolina, I've done just that. And then give one policy example of something you introduced the senator supported. And that's really all you have to do. And then you don't have to worry about running out of time or anything like that. And that's a great little complete argument, a complete list that makes a case for you as president. I just think that's really good. I don't understand why they don't do this. It was way, way too much on self-selling. Like, I did this, and I'm this, and I'm the only one, and I'm the only one, and I'm the only one. Okay, great. That's evidence. It's not an argument. That's evidence you've done something. But that's not an argument. An argument would be, here's what I think we should do. Here's why, and here's how. And I think that's how you make a case. In a very, very simple model. There are tons and tons and tons and tons of argument models out there. But that's a very, very simple, if you only have a couple of minutes, it's a very simple argument model you can just put out there. And I think TikTok will take on these presidential debates, no question. And we'll have to look at TikTok tomorrow and see what people do as response to this. But most people are so jaded and cynical, they'll just make fun of these events. I think that's what most of the TikTok would be. But it would be very powerful for someone to edit the debate in a way that makes their own person look great. And that is kind of what I'm suggesting that you do with the 4 terms. It's kind of edit the debate, take things and look at what you want to research and look at what do you believe and what did you hear and see in the debate that made you go look something up or made you say, Maybe I don't believe that as strongly, or maybe here's why I do believe it much more strongly. It's because of what this person said. Sometimes the most powerful thing about political speech is that it gives us words for our beliefs and helps us support our own beliefs, which I think is great. So it gives us ways to do that. All right, folks, it's coming to the end of the stream here. What questions or comments do you have? Please put them in the chat. I'll see them and I'll address them. I'll leave the rest of it up to you. I've said kind of what I want to say. Burnham supporting the doctrine of nullification, weirdly. I just don't know if that's right. I got to go look at the Webster-Hayne debate, I guess. I read it a couple of times. I loved it. It's such a cool, like, we do not have debates like this on the floor of the Senate anymore. What else stuck out to you? Nikki Haley's, I'm pro-life, but we can't possibly get the votes. Or was it Chris Christie's assaults on Vivek Ramaswamy, even though the Axiom leak made us think that Ron DeSantis was the one who was going to do that? What stands out to you? Asa Hutchinson sounding like a 1990s politician, maybe. Maybe he was a little outdated. I don't know. Did you change your mind about anybody? Did anybody actually seem like a serious presidential contender? Do you have a reason for that? Interesting comment here from Bad Jazz. I think we have to do that. We're not. I mean, I don't think any audience has trouble processing information. I think that this is a story told to us by the media. I think it's kind of baseless. I think people are much better at processing information and thinking about things than we are, but they can't communicate it. And so then we think that lack of communication means they can't process it. But we're not taught how to communicate our ideas in a way for other people to access them. We're not taught to say, here's what I believe, here are the reasons why, here's to feel that way. Here are some of the conditions under which I wouldn't hold that view. We're not taught how to communicate in that really nice kind of propositional way. There's a great book, Hugo Mercier and Dan Sperber, who I always talk about a lot on this channel, wrote Enigma of Reason, one of the most important argument books ever written, and definitely the most important recent argument book out there. Hugo Mercier wrote another book called, I think it's called, I can't remember the name of it, but I can look it up now. Hugo Mercier books. My memory. Oh, Not Born Yesterday. Not Born Yesterday shows that people are actually quite good at understanding the stuff, but they're very bad at communicating it. They're pretty good at kind of getting at not being fooled, but it's a complicated argument. Anyway, the point being that as a rhetorician, I can't ever blame the audience. I have to blame the rhetor. I have to say the rhetor screwed up, right? The rhetor made the mistake and misjudged the audience and said something that the audience didn't buy or anything. So Ramaswamy saying that climate change doesn't exist, I think really misjudged the Republican audience and the young audience. A lot of young Republican voters out there. I know people don't like to believe that, but get out the vote campaigns for young people. Get out lots of conservative and right-wing votes too. So just having people go vote and thinking their age is going to make them liberal is rather silly, or that their age is going to make them conservative is rather silly. You have to talk about this content too. But anyway, I'm digress. The point I'm trying to make is that I think that candidate desperation is definitely to blame here. I think they felt like they weren't going to have enough time and that they needed to fight for their time. They forgot they were on Fox News. Fox News loves all these people. So they're going to give them all, I think, equal time. But they had a lot of trouble controlling them because they did get kind of desperate. And also the candidates didn't have a game plan. The game plan is, how do I make sure I say something that's going to cycle in the news tomorrow? How am I going to say something that's a minute, that's a nice little, I mean, you know, all those closing statements were terrible. And they were desperate. They were like, I got to mention these big terms, got to say this and this. Complete disconnect. Complete disconnect. And they had their little quotes and their little fun things that they practiced saying, like Nikki Haley had her Margaret Thatcher quote. I don't know. A lot of them had a little phrase that they had been practicing or something that they really want to talk about. Talk about transgender athletes. It's just a non-starter of an issue. That issue, I would advise Republican candidates to use to say, look how ridiculous the national conversation has become because we don't talk about our shared values. That's where the transgender stuff comes in, I'd say. That could be pretty powerful. It's not very powerful to say, as president, I don't think blah, 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 this kind of thing. I think that you want to talk in generalities about what the country needs and what the plans should be. And then you want to talk about what you've done that shows that you can be the person to deliver those plans. So I don't know. Okay, process information collaboratively, collectively. Well, that's the purpose of the FPVA model, is to give you a grounding of saying that. Say, well, I just think their vision is not what I would do. I agree with them in principle, but I just don't think the vision. I think the vision is the problem. So what do you mean? It's like, I just don't think this plan is a good plan. Although I agree with them on what's going on in the world and what the values are, I just don't think it would work. Or I think they have a great plan. I just don't think they're the person to do it. It's very similar to the way that we argue about candidates now when we're being civil, right? Like Trump kind of really kicked that to the curve. It's kind of like Mortal Kombat out there now when you talk about candidates. But I even think with candidates as polarizing as Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, you could still do it. You could say Trump has great policies, but he can't carry them out because of his actions, because of who he is and how he talks and how he treats people and his all that sediment on him. Or you could say Hillary Clinton's principles are absolutely abhorrent to what I think America's about. You could have these, you could talk about these things. So here's why I don't support them. Here's what I think. That. Okay. Dream Shadow has a question. How much of that desperation was rooted in trying to sway the Trump? This is a great question. I don't know. Do you need the Trump supporters to win? Nomination? Maybe. I wonder if we could look. This is why I really wish the transcript would come out, because I would love to look. Because that's a transcript question. Because you can look through and say, okay, these are the phrases of the Trump supporters. There were definitely candidates who were like, didn't care about that sector one bit, right? Like, no, we don't need Trump anymore. Chris Christie saying he's disqualified himself. Okay, great. Other people dodging the question, saying they'll do what's constitutionally required. Mike Pence saying he's done it. I don't know. There are a lot of Trump supporters out there, but I wonder how many there are. My suspicion is the media makes it seem like Trump has huge amounts of support when he probably doesn't. And the way these polls are put out of like Trump versus Biden, that's a lot of people saying, well, it's 44-44 by what I saw last. If that was the election today, it would be a tie, pretty much, really close anyway. And I just wonder how many people out there are just voting for the Republican, or if they actually like Trump. Because that's the thing about Republicans. They always tend to vote for their candidate regardless. But sometimes if this candidate's disqualified, it'll be interesting to see what the party does about that. So I guess it would be Ron DeSantis. But yeah. If Trump is ineligible, where do these Trump voters go and how many of them are there? It's a very good question. Very interesting question. And I wonder if in the debate we saw people doing that, appealing to that. All right. Any other last minute thoughts here before we all go to bed and dream of a bunch of people in terrible suits, barely able to articulate their ideas to one another? Oh, yeah, that's a great question. So debates are fraught with this kind of thing. So these media debates are quite new. So in the past, debates were very limited because of Section 315 of the U.S. Federal Telecommunications Act. Should come up right away. It's often called the Fairness Doctrine. And the Equal Time Rule. Now, what's interesting about this is this was suspended by act of Congress because of Adlai Stevenson's influence in 1960 and allowed for there to be a 1960s debate. This, what you're seeing here of Kennedy and Nixon on national TV in 1960, was illegal. Illegal. It was the Congress saying we're going to suspend that section just for the election, just so we can try this televised debate thing. Because the way that equal time was argued was that if you had airwaves and you gave it to one candidate, you had to give it equal time to every other candidate. Sadly, Stevenson felt the brunt of this the worst when our allies invaded the Suez Canal to take the Suez Canal away from the Egyptians after a coup. Eisenhower was like, no, we're not going to involve U.S. troops in this. This is not cool. Stevenson, it was an election year. Stevenson says, I want to reply to this too. I want equal time. And the networks were like, okay, you can have equal time to respond to this argument. But then they change their minds. They say, well, actually, Eisenhower's speaking as president, not as a candidate, so equal time doesn't apply. And so this really made Stevenson feel like he was being treated unfair by the laws about media representation and time. So the equal time provision, I think, changed. It's changed a bunch of times. The Federal Election Campaign Act made it to where if they don't do that, then so you have reasonable access, and then it's not really enforceable anymore. The way that they got around this in the past was that the Commission on Presidential Debates had the debates as a bona fide news event, because that was one of the exemptions laws. If there was a bona fide news event, you could cover it, you could cover the candidates, and you wouldn't have to give equal time to every other weird candidate like the Vermin Supremes and the third, fourth, fifth party, sixth party candidates. You wouldn't have to do that. So this Fox News debate is able to do this because they just invite the candidates they think are going to move, the ones that people want to see. And I think they would argue that they have a vested interest in that, because nobody wants to see some candidates on the stage. They wouldn't have anything credible to offer. But Fox didn't host this debate and invite other journalists to cover it. They didn't do that. They were like, this is a Fox TV event, and other TV stations are going to reply to it. But debates didn't happen from 1960 till 1976. And there were lots of reasons. LBJ said there's no need to debate if you're an incumbent. You've already proven yourself. Richard Nixon said debates are dangerous for incumbents because you might say something that's national security secret, trying to win the debate. You might forget what's classified or not, because as the president, you're getting all this information all the time, and you might not be able to remember what was actually, confidential or not. It might give you the appearance of not really having the information. It might also mean that you divulge something dangerous to the public, and then our enemies know it, and all that. The biggest case of a major contender not joining a debate in the past would have been the 1980 election. That was a 3-person race. People forget that. It's Ronald Reagan, Jimmy Carter, and then a guy named John Anderson. And John Anderson today would have been a libertarian candidate, but he was a Republican from Ohio running on a different kind of Republican platform than Reagan was. There was a split in the party. The League of Women Voters was handling the presidential debates, and they invited all 3 candidates to the debate. Jimmy Carter read the writing on the wall and was like, I'm not going to that. They're just a slugfest on me. I'm going to look pretty bad. I just won't go. And it's called the empty chair debate because the League of Women Voters left the podium up there empty. And then Anderson and Reagan had the debate. And they were like, well, we can fight all night. We can go back and forth like this all night. Super fun. But in the end, the person who really needs to answer for what's going on in the country chose not to come. And that's kind of kept repeating. So it made Carter look, I think, pretty bad. Now, did it move the needle in the voting booth? I don't know if you can really measure that. And also, I feel like debates are pretty minimal in terms of moving things. I think talking to your friends and family about who to vote for is probably much more influential than any debate could ever be. But Carter did choose not to debate. So that puts, Donald Trump saying, I'm not going to go to this debate is similar to that. But Donald Trump is not saying, I'm not going to a national debate. Carter said, I'm not going to one of the big national debates of like Democrat, Republican, the big presidential debates that we think about as the big ones happen in October. Carter didn't go because he didn't want to debate both Anderson and Reagan. 1980. So interesting debate. I think you can watch it on YouTube. I think it's out there. Are there any other examples of people not going, big candidates not going to debates? I feel like I'm missing one. The Commission on Presidential Debates was very worried that George H.W. Bush wouldn't attend the 1988 debate with Dukakis because it was under new rules and a new organization. And he felt like maybe, and George H.W. Bush hated debates and thought they were useless. As you can see in his performance, he was never really all that invested in them. But he decided to come and do it, and it really he had debated more than any other living candidate at that point. He had debated more times, vice presidential debates, presidential campaign debates, primary debates, all that. Internal party debates are exempt from from the equal time laws, because they are, for the membership of the party. So they're not really offering to multiple candidates. It's the party doing and hosting it. Sometimes they get picked up on radio stations and stuff. There's a very, very famous one between Thomas Dewey, governor of New York, and you remember Dewey defeats Truman, the famous newspaper. Dewey defeats Truman. Thomas Dewey, governor of New York, Republican, against Harold Stassen, former governor of Minnesota, Republican of Minnesota. They did a debate, and they did it the right way. Should the Communist Party be outlawed in the United States? They did it for the Oregon primary, and it was broadcast on the radio. And it was it was picked up and broadcast nationally. It was very popular. And it made Thomas Dewey really look good. I think it really influenced the nomination, because Dewey really knew how to handle that format. I don't think Stassen really knew what to do. He wasn't as confident. And I also think one of the things that influences these things, and why candidates probably wouldn't want to pick the kind of debate I modeled at the beginning of this stream, is because they know that some sides have a good side bias. So on the topic, the U.S. Communist Party should be outlawed, Stassen took the affirmative and said, yeah, it should be. And Dewey said, no, we should have the Communist Party in the United States. Now, that's a harder case to make. So the idea is that people listening to it will give him the benefit of the doubt and say, wow, it was a really good argument, because that's the hard side. So the wording of these topics and the side bias has to be taken into account. I think, Dewey did a great job with it. He talked about how difficult it is to prosecute mafiosos in New York. As a prosecutor in New York, he had done a lot of that, and how difficult it is because all their activities underground and black markets and stuff. And it's better to allow them to operate legally, because then you can really watch them, was his argument. But we're going to see a big challenge to Dream Shadow's question when it comes time for the national debates. The Republican National Committee has said their candidate has to sign something that says that they will not appear in any Commission on Presidential Debate events. They said that they're going to push that through. I don't know if at the convention that'll pass or not. And also, if the candidate's Trump, he's going to do whatever the hell he wants anyway. I don't think anybody can control that guy. If it's another candidate, they might, stick their finger in the wind and see how it looks. It might make them look really good to show up, if they think they can, to show up Joe Biden on a national stage. They might just say to do it. But this might be another history-making thing where you only have one candidate show up to the debate. Joe Biden comes, and then the Republicans don't come because they're like, we're not going to participate in the biased Commission on Presidential Debate events. We're not going to participate. We're boycotting them because of how they treated Donald Trump last time, or they have no good moderators like Steve Scully, who are like lying jerks or whatever. All those controversies. All right, what else is on your mind, streaming audience? That was a great question. That's a good one to talk about, because it really is no obligation. And people have said there should be obligation. Oh, one more thing on Dream Shadow's thing before I open up, but put your questions in the chat. I'll share them. We'll talk about them. Anything about the Republican debate tonight? Anything you want to talk about, or anything that got your attention? Would love to hear your thoughts and give you my expert response as a rhetorician, not a political scientist, but somebody interested in rhetoric and communication and argument. I'll give you my response. One other thing I want to say about this from that is that what was I going to say? I forgot. All right, well, I'll just wait for you to chat then. I forgot what I was going to say. I cut myself off. and then I blanked. Forget what it was I was going to talk about. I'm sure it'll come back to me. What do you find people think out there? Yeah, the equal time rule is still pretty significant. Significant issue. See if there's a transcript yet. Yeah. Hmm. Nothing yet. Oh yeah, let's ask Bing chat who won the Republican debate. Huh. Newsweek said Nikki Haley won. Very odd. I don't know. It's hard to say who won these things. All right. Well, I think we should call it. Unless you guys have other things you want to talk about, this will be the end of the stream. But after I get a transcript, I'll make a more formal video. I just wanted to do an initial reaction and say, bad organization, no connection between what they're saying and the case they're trying to make, scrambling for attention and airtime. All these things make you look so bad. The point of the debate is to give people things that they can use to support you as a candidate or want to support you as a candidate. Everything that everybody did on the stage made people not want to support them. And it's just kind of a question of who did the least bad job. If you think about it as making a case for yourself and doing that and leaving it up to people and thinking this audience can really handle it and make decisions, that's great. But I think a lot of them think you have to spoon feed and talk about your nonsense because people are stupid, people are dumb and can't understand things. This kind of like line that everybody likes to repeat is the trap that means that your rhetoric will never be successful. You always must have faith in the audience and you have to address them. There's no alternative. All right, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.